Hi, my name's Dean Wellen, and right now, I'd say probably less than 1% of the world trains jiu-jitsu. And out of that, probably less than 1% of the people who train jiu-jitsu care about the belt they're wearing. And this podcast is for you guys. So without any further ado, welcome to Dude Where's My Belt, episode 1. My boy, Mike Dytri. What's up, man? How are you today?
Nice. It's great to be here. Dude, where's my belt? I like that. I like it.
Seem fitting?
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of keep the vibe of it. Well, yeah, let's jump into it, brother. Right now, what belt are you wearing? Who made it? And kind of what's special to you about it?
What belt am I wearing? Let me grab it. I'm wearing this belt right here, which is a belt that was made by Kataro, USA. I got it in, when did I get this? 2016.
You got the date on it.
Well, the date that I have on it is actually the date that I started training jiu-jitsu with the gi on.
Gotcha.
So I just had my name, the date that I started training jiu-jitsu, combat base.
Check that out.
Yeah, Chris Haueter gave me my black belt in 2016. And
so back in 2016, when you got this belt, I remember seeing this middle embroidery.
Yeah.
And I picked this up from you of just having that marker, which you grab your belt, you have to kind of hold it up, make sure it's even. And when I saw you do that, I was like, bro, that's brilliant.
Yeah, I had it laid out to where that little sort of slash was right sort of in the area, or this one actually was right in the center, so that I would always have a marker when I put it on and tied my belt and everything was even. That's kind of how I had it laid out.
But what's cool about that, though, which I've done for people now when I give like custom belts out, is when you tie it, you don't see any of the embroidery.
Right.
Which I thought that was, and I feel like that just speaks to your style of like,
yeah,
just like, it's cooler than you can even realize. Like, it's all about like the little details.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was more or less personal, sort of sentimental for me, just in the sense that the year 2013 is when my daughter was born, and that was kind of the year that I had to stop really doing the MMA hard rounds and sparring that I was doing, and my wife was like, I don't want you doing that anymore. I started noticing some sort of, kind of effects of the head trauma, so I was like, I got to do something. Started training jiu-jitsu, got introduced to Chris, and so it was more sentimental. It wasn't really meant to be seen in a sense from the outside. It was more of a kind of like a personal sentimental thing.
I like it. Look good. And
so yeah, this is the belt I'm wearing now.
So we'll kind of diving in, like, what's up with the guts? I know what makes that belt special, but let's just kind of share with the world, because this is kind of like the inspiration for the Vanguard belt. I mean, you have so many similar details with the core, and
it is. And this was way before I even started Vanguard, but I wanted to spec this belt out to what Kataro has listed as their premium. They have it. It's a premium. It's not the stiff one. I think it's the soft one, but it's the premium, and it has a core, 2-layer core inside, which is the first core is a white kind of pearl weave. The second core is the red twill, and then the black outside. So as you start getting wear and tear in the belt, it starts to reveal that purple underneath, red underneath, which I thought was pretty cool. And then eventually it'll go to white. And that's kind of how I had this belt spec'd out. And so when I got this belt and I started wearing it, I was just like, man, I've had some really nice belts from judo and karate. They were all made in Japan. And I had never seen like a belt that was this quality. And I even liked it more because they were based in the Midwest and they were made in the US. And so I was like, oh, this is an amazing belt. So when I finally got around to thinking about this project for Vanguard, I reached out to them, pitched them the idea of making the Salvage denim black belt, and they were, the guy Gage was all into it, and yeah, that's how it started.
I feel like I gotta cue up my Jocko voice and be like, made in the USA. Get some.
It's a big thing. It's a big thing. I mean, I like to do everything I can do in terms of made in the USA. I've been in clothing and apparel for a long time, and yeah, I really love the made in the USA thing. I think, there's major kind of, investment that goes into making anything in the US, just because labor costs are higher. It's harder for you to make it because labor is not as readily available, especially when you're talking about cut and sew. And then you have guys like the guy Pete from Origin who are doing things that are even outside of just apparel, making boots and accessories and stuff. So kind of really appreciate what he's doing. Yeah, I like it.
Nice. So with this belt, actually, it's different from with the Vanguard belt, something that you pointed out. Can I see it real quick?
Mm-hmm.
So I just noticed you said that it has just the red twill.
Yeah.
And we can see here where it's stitching, and then it fades into white, compared to the Vanguard belt just has a red core, a solid red core.
Yep. So
this is what they call their transition belt. And something I like about their transition belts are they're a little bit thinner. It's almost like a single core and then wrapped in the twill, so they tie a lot nicer. I haven't worn one of these, but I've made a few to give to friends, and I'm checking it out. And this is something kind of like non-traditional too. I'm seeing you put the black stripes on it. Shout out to the Second Degree, my man.
Yeah, thanks.
We've been going at it since purple belt days.
I know. Well, you were blue belt actually.
Oh, mega throwback.
You were blue belt and I was purple belt, and you showed up at the garage and got me in a foot lock that I was sore from for at least a couple years.
All right, well, hold up. Before we start throwing the foot lock thing out for it, let's dive into that roll real quick. Because we started rolling, and it was clear both of us like to kind of get after it.
Yeah, you were this young, scrappy kid, and of course my ego at that time was like, okay, there's this young, scrappy kid. I want to go with that kid. And you, were like trying to take my foot off, and then
no. As far as my memory serves correct, we start rolling, we're going back and forth, and I remember shooting a quick triangle.
Yes.
And I remember you being really caught off guard. You really tried to like go after it.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to flip the script, because after that, we're like, okay, all good. We slap hands, and you dove on my foot. And when you dove on my foot, I put my boot on and I countered.
Yeah.
And then it was.
I was trying to get you back.
Like now, bro, you catch me in an armbar, I'm tapping with my arms at like 45 degrees. But back then it was a little like fresh roll. But that's just the vibe of the garage, right? Like now it's chilled out so much, but back then it was like.
I think now you still have occasionally, depending on who it is, but yeah, the vibe of the garage, I think, which is awesome. And Chris kind of sets that whole vibe. Just, it's kind of like, you get in where you fit in. And if you want to go hard, there's always somebody who's going to want to go hard and match that level. So there's battles that have happened, and things have gotten pretty intense there at times between people, pushing and shoving, and kind of nearly going to blows. But
we're not going to talk about any instances right now with any people over there. But kind of jumping back into training, like I said, the first time we rolled, I was a blue belt, you were a purple belt,
right? And
something that interesting about your jiu-jitsu career, you kind of started in the gi at purple belt.
I did. And the long story short is, way before I met you, it was back in probably 2008 or 9, there was a Copa Pacifica here that I wanted to compete in, just because a bunch of friends from the gym I was training at, Raw, were going to compete in it as well. And so I didn't have a belt at that time in jiu-jitsu. And so I had called Howard Liu, who was the guy that I knew and I was friends with there.
Howard Liu, like that's Howard Combat Kimonos,
HCK, Howard Combat Kimonos, HCK. He would go to Raw as well. And so I called him and I was like, man, I'm going to compete at this Copa Pacific. What belt do you think I am? He's like, well, you know what? Let me think about it. Let me call like Andy Wang. And I said, I'm going to Hawaii this next week. And he's like, oh, if you're going to Hawaii, why don't you go to Barrett Yoshida's? Barrett Yoshida's got a place there to train at. So the next week I went to Hawaii. I met Barrett, and Barrett's place was in this like shopping center in Honolulu. And it's kind of like they had the mats rolled out in this place. It was almost like vacant. I couldn't really figure out what the place was. It was in a little plaza. So his wife was there and he had a bunch of his students there. So I rolled with him and rolled with a few of his students, and it was just going back and forth and stuff. And so
this was in the gi or no gi?
Oh, this is no gi.
No gi.
Because the Copa Pacific was in,
that's a gi
was gi, but there was no gi as well. There was gi and no gi. I was like, I was going to do both. And I was like, I never did it, but I'm going to do both. And Howard's like, oh yeah, you can do it. And so when I got back, he's like, oh, Barrett told me you're a purple belt. So let me give you one of my purple belts. Come over to my spot. He's got a spot in Gardena, and I'll give you your belt. And he gave me a gi too. And that's what I wore at that time. It was like 2000, 8 or something. So yeah, that's the first time. And then I didn't train in the gi until 2013 because I was still doing MMA and training with those guys, you know, at Raw and at CMMA and all that stuff up between then and 2013. And so I just showed up at the garage with my purple belt. But when I did that, it was like the weekend before I had met Chris Haueter and Wesley at John Marsh's Triton school in Redondo. And they just schooled me for like an hour and, you know, were choking me out for like a solid hour. But Chris is like, you got a great, like, you're a wrestler and, you know, you got a great base. Come over to the garage on Sunday. Here's my address. And that's what happened.
Damn. Full history.
Yeah.
Well, bro, that was kind of a little like mind bend for me because I'm not gonna lie, I hyper focus on little details. So if like I'm talking with someone, usually like I'm checking out like their shoes or like the contrast stitching. And when I'm on the mat, I'm just always staring at everyone's belt. And something that really like wrecked my mind was your Howard belt. If we could pull it up here.
Let's do it.
This belt has instructor bars on it.
Right.
And this was one of the first the first time I was like introduced to seeing these sewn on belts because they were always just taped on.
Yeah.
And then my mind's just like, yo, is this guy like an instructor? I thought these were only for black belts. And so this was like the first time I've seen bars on a non-colored belt. And now it's like, you're seeing so many variations. Gracie University, if you get 10 of their combatives belts, which is like the intro level before you get your blue belt, they'll give you your combatives bars to be like, hey, look, you like made 10 people.
Okay.
But when you put these on, I was like, yo, who is this guy? What is this? And
yeah, I mean, full transparency, I had no idea what these were when he gave it to me, or what they were for, or etc. He just gave me a purple belt, and I think a couple people commented on, oh, do you teach somewhere or something? So I eventually learned that, okay, or traditionally when you do have these, that means you're either a coach or an instructor teaching jiu-jitsu. And yeah.
Which is cool. Like you had them on your colored belts, but you don't rep them on your black belts now, which
I
kind of like vice versa what everyone's doing.
Yeah, no, I don't. And there was the option. Obviously, they give you the option to place them on your belt when you order from Kataro. You know, they charge an extra. But they also have a cool policy too, where they if you order them, the bars, they offer you a, I guess, promotion belt. They will add stripes for life.
That's not even if you get the instructor bars. All of Kataro's belts come with free stripes for life.
That's a pretty awesome value. So like you can send it back to them and they'll put the next bar on it.
When you
as
say
you
put the bars on, like they're sewing them in. Like
they
nice.
are. And unfortunately I don't have one with me, but they're really, really nice quality. They have, both edges sewn on. It's a really, really well done execution.
Yeah, I actually got mine here.
Forever.
We'll dive into that in a second. But
Cool.
So kind of jumping back into just unique things about belts, you opted not to send your belt into Kataro to get your stripes, but what you did where you taped your stripes on, but you did it in black. Is that just aesthetics? Is that, did Chris say anything about like, yo, you're a black striper? Like,
no,
it looks sick, but what's going on with this right here?
Okay, so technically, no, those were white and he did tape them on white. They ended up falling off. And I think I was at Undefeated training a while back, and the only tape that was available on the mat was their Army green tape. And so
so this is actually green?
Yeah, so I put those back on in Army green. So that's the story behind there.
That's dope, bro. I like it. Yeah, that's actually a
green
question I was going to ask you later. What to do if your stripes fall off? Obviously, we know like black belts around that just like have a red bar, but they might be like a 4th degree or 5th degree. Like Henner does that. You got some people, I'm not gonna lie, at brown belt, I feel like I was taping my stripes on like every other week. Like anytime they like look not perfect.
For sure.
And then now it's cool. All these belt companies are sewing them on. But yeah, so if your stripes fall off, what do you recommend for people? Just like, put them back on, and that's another thing too, where it's like, do I got to ask Chris to put them back on? And something about Chris, he could care less. Like when I got my purple and brown belt from him, he didn't even give me a belt. Shout out to Brandon Kuba, who was one of the first people who actually gave me like a quality belt, which is a EOS and Panther brown belt.
Nice.
They're doing good stuff. Shout out to them. They're made in the USA as well.
Nice.
And it's just so funny. You're like,
I think with the stripes, it just depends. You know, I mean, I think if you have a coach, instructor, professor that you feel would get offended by you reapplying your stripes if they fell off, then maybe you have to think about other things if that's really kind of the case. But you know, with Chris, I never really felt like I had to ask him to put it back on. If they fell off, I just put them back on. In fact, he told me, he's like, look, I'm not going to remember all the time. So, you know, when you're up for your next stripe, make sure you tell me, you know. And he's like, Melissa keeps track of these things and she does a good job at it, but sometimes things slip through the cracks. But don't be afraid to tell me, hey, you know, I'm due for my stripe. So he's great like that. So you know, sort of the ego, and I think there's a time and a place for tradition and for sort of, I think, unwritten rules and sort of things that you just sort of do in jiu-jitsu, martial arts overall, but jiu-jitsu, and I'm not really sure if that's one of them, the stripes thing.
Yeah, well, diving into stripes falling off and unwritten rules. Mike Dytri, question of the hour. Do you wash your jiu-jitsu belt?
Yes.
How often?
Not very often. And let me maybe rephrase or kind of put in perspective what I mean by washing my belt. I don't like throw it in the dryer and then throw it in the washer and then throw it in the dryer like with my normal laundry.
You get these people with like Chris Haueter looking belts, but they've only been a black belt for like 6 months.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you do that, it'll definitely add a lot of wear and tear on your belt. And I mean, you have to wash it a lot to really get that kind of wear. But what I do is I soak it in the washing machine with a little bit of vinegar, just because let's be frank. I mean, I'm a germ freak. I mean, I'm a clean freak. I like to be clean. A lot of times I won't go train or roll at a place if there's not a shower available for me to use afterwards. When I first started dating my wife 20 years ago and was training, and you know, I would come home and unfortunately I gave her ringworm, and it was this one time when she's like, I noticed it on her neck and I was like, oh, wait a minute, come here. And I rubbed a little Lamisil on that and she didn't know what it was. And when she did find out, she was like, oh, that's gross. So I personally feel like I like to be clean, and I don't train at places that are not clean. And when you're exchanging sweat and when you're on the mat, there's ringworm, there's like, you know, my MRSA, there's all kinds of bacteria that can be really nasty, and your belt's no different. So for people who say, never wash my belt, it's like, it's kind of gross. It's probably going to smell really bad. So I think in terms of washing, I soak it in water and a little bit of vinegar. I hang it dry. It dries in a couple days. And then I put it back on and wear it, and I'm good to go for, you know, a while, 4 or 5 months or whatever, and then do it again. And that's kind of how I treat it.
So that's the move. So if you don't want your belt to fall apart, a little water, a little vinegar.
Yes. Cause you can't do any sort of kind of harsh detergents, because it will break down the material. And especially with a belt, there's a lot of just like with your gi, there's a lot of wear and tear on it, grabbing and pulling and friction. So that'll only add to it if you use detergents and things like that. Nice. But I think the way to get it done is to soak it in vinegar, because it does kill bacteria. And it'll also take the stink and funk out of it. So you're good to go.
Mike Dytri says, wash your belt, guys.
I have no problem. Anybody thinks differently, that's your own business, and that's cool.
I like it, bro. I like it. Yeah. What was kind of the first cool belt you've seen? Or, because I know obviously you're as design detail oriented as they get. What was something that you might have saw in someone else? I saw recently like a belt with contrast stitching, and now almost to a shout out to, I feel like the most popular belt geek out there, although he's anonymous, is BJJ Belt Collector.
Yes. Both
of us have had shout outs on him. So shout out to BJJ Belt Collector.
BJJ Belt Collector.
But I see a lot of cool things. Now I'm seeing contrast stitching, or I remember the Vulcan Corral belts. They had the contrast stitching in their belts on the bars. So that was kind of cool. Was there anything throughout the years you saw and you're like, yo, that's rad? Or I think for me, your belt, where I was like, yo, instructor bars sewn in, what?
That was interesting. I think the Vulcan Corral belts, I've seen those are cool. I think I'm not a big fan of playing with different types of fabrics. Like I've seen some belts.
Bro, you're not a fan of playing with different types of fabrics on belts?
No.
You know how much I rep? I'm like, yo, I'm rocking a vintage denim belt.
Yeah, no,
Salvage vintage is the same to me. I'm going to ask you about that in a minute.
Let me qualify that statement. I mean, when you see a belt that's made from, I've seen
the
like
pearl weaves?
No, satin sort of like fabric, where it's like shiny sort of satin. I think that's a little off. It's a little weird. I don't mind the pearl weave belts that brands make. I think that looks pretty cool. It wears in pretty cool and it starts to break down pretty interesting. It has a nice like patina and it starts to wear in really cool. But I think that sticking to a twill based fabrics, cotton based fabrics is really the place to go. And that's what denim is, right? Denim is the same weave and weft, the same construction as a twill, cotton twill. It's called denim just because there's a tiny little difference in one of the weaves that gives it a tiny different texture, but it is essentially a twill. Bull denim is a twill. And it has the same sort of properties as cotton twill in terms of like lasting and durability, etc. I mean, denim is the oldest sort of uniform fabric that's been around since, the railways and, construction workers and like laborers, back in the late 1800s, mid 1800s, Levi Strauss. I mean, that was all made for workwear. So I think the properties of denim really, lend itself well to martial arts uniforms, belts.
With that being said, I think we should take time for a commercial break for our next sponsor, Vanguard Kimono. They specialize in denim kimonos, Salvage denim, really nice. I mean, obviously this is your brand right here, but we got a new drop coming up and let's cut to that break.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution.
Thank you, Vanguard, for taking care of the podcast.
Thank
you, Mike. Got to cover those production costs.
Got to support.
Well, the first question I wrote down for my notes for you was, Mike, did you ever get tempted to switch out your belt for a Vanguard belt?
That's a good question. I think going back to what I was talking about earlier, there's like some sentimental element to that. Although I do have to say, I do have one of the Kataaro Vanguards and I've only worn it once, maybe twice. And it's in my car, so I just sort of like leave it in there. But I do have, a brand new one here that is actually for a friend of mine that just got his black belt. And I'm going to gift this to him. But I do get tempted to wear it only because I see like your belt. I see like Isaac's belt. I see Tino's belt. They have the Salvage denim belt and they're starting to wear in really, really good. And the patina that's happening on them, the edges are starting to sort of get distressed and it's looking really, really cool. And I'm just thinking, I better start sooner or later because it takes a while to get that, to start happening, a few years. And so maybe pretty soon I'll start wearing it.
Bro. So when these dropped, I bought one and I bought it a little big because I thought, maybe I'll give it away or just better to have it and not need it. And I knew because like, although you are hooking me up with gis and stuff, it's like, I don't like to ask for stuff. I mean, you take care of me so well. So it's like, to be like, oh, hey, could you hook me up with something like this? And especially too, like knowing the cost. But before I got my black belt, you did actually hook me up with one.
Yep.
And it was way too small. It was like Andy Horry size.
I remember.
And I was grateful because I was like,
I think that's the one I gave to Andy, actually.
I was like, yo, do you have one a little bigger? And I knew like there were only 100 made. And you were like, bro, I got one at my office. And it had instructor bars on it. And so I got my black belt through Gracie University. And their belts are just standard 8 stitching cotton core. And I started wearing this one, but the white bar kind of turned me off.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually took it to the embroidery. Shout out to Fully Promoted.
Wow.
And I got the bar embroidered over.
Wow.
And with this one, I took off the instructor bars, and it looks so sick with the way Kataro, like, they don't fold over. And it makes sense because when you put the instructor bars on, if you fold the belt over, like we have here, it's going to create like a bulge. So this is the belt I'm using right now. So you could see like it runs flat. Now, bro, I botched this up so bad. So one, I thought it would be sentimental to put the date I got my black belt on and every belt I've had. So I got white, yellow, orange, green, blue, purple, brown, and then the navy's for the Gracie Combatives belt.
Oh, that's cool.
But everyone was like, oh yeah, it's a cool rainbow on your belt. And I was like, oh damn.
They didn't get it.
I was like,
they didn't make the connection.
And yeah, so I ended up retiring this belt. And I have all my old belts. I want to make a belt frame, and I kind of wanted to like wear in a belt to have in that frame. And yeah, you could see like the red popping through. I think it's on, yeah, this side right here.
I see it.
It's breaking in so sick. And I was actually fiddling with the back of it in the stitching. And you could see with yours, compared to the belt you're wearing right now, it has that full solid red core.
Yep.
But yeah, so in embroidering over that white bar, this thing just does not stay tied.
Yeah.
At all.
Too much, yeah.
And now what sucks is kind of going back to your point, is I put so much time in with this belt and I got it looking all faded and nice. And then when I got my instructor bars, I sent this one into Kataro and had them stitch them on. And now it's like I started fresh again. And now it's like I could see where some red's going to pop out. But again, it's just like, having to break into new belts. It's like breaking in new trucks on a skateboard.
It is, yeah. It takes a little while. Bushings need to get a little soft, and yeah.
But with this one, I did what you said. I took a magic marker and just colored out the white bar.
That's what Chris did.
And yeah, I soaked it in water, hung it. And then when I washed it when I markered it and then washed it, I didn't dry it, hung it. The marker was still transferring off. And I'm like, bro, this is going to wreck all my gis. Dude, I took a toothbrush and I scrubbed every inch of it. And then I washed it again. And now no gi transfer.
That's cool.
So this is the belt I'm wearing right now. This is my daily driver, the Vanguard kimono belt.
I like it.
And we got 11 rows of stitching in them, right?
Yep, that's right.
And then what's something really unique about this belt, Mike, that I don't even think I don't know if this was intended and kind of what I asked you about. This is basically like two belts in one. So with the standard belt, it wraps around and you have your seam side and the fold over side.
That's right.
But with this one, it's got like a double seam. So that's the first I've ever seen that before.
Yeah. That was designed. I actually printed out one of the design, like the first design spec that spec that I gave to Kataro.
Thank you.
So I printed this out just so I could show you. So this was kind of like the way that I had instructed them to make the belt for the Salvage. The very first sample had this rainbow Salvage edge. And the way that it was designed is so that the Salvage would meet in the middle. And so the construction, the way that we talked about the construction, they said that they have to, in order to have it through the machine the proper way, it's got to form a sandwich on both sides, right? So normally there's only a sandwich on one side. And the way that they go through the folder, it's like this waistband folder on the machine. In order to get it to bite down and clamp down correctly so that it lasts, they have to do it on both sides. And the way that I wanted them to set up the Salvage edge so that it was in the middle, only on one side, because I wanted to give the wearer the opportunity or the option to wear it either on the outside or the inside. And that's the only way that it would finish off correctly. So that was kind of like a back and forth sampling process with Kataro to get it like this. And once I saw them execute it this way, I was like, oh, that's it. Let's go with it.
So is this one solid piece of Salvage or is it two pieces put together?
It's 2 pieces put together.
Gotcha.
And the reason it's 2 pieces is because Salvage denim itself comes on narrow rolls of fabric. And the Salvage denim that I use for the Kataro.
All right, hold on. Let me cut you off right now. Bro, what is Salvage? Because I've been telling everyone I got a vintage Japanese denim belt, and I don't think I'm...
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Okay.
Okay, so let me explain what Salvage is. Salvage essentially comes from the term self-edge, right? And people just started calling it Salvage. And the reason it's called self-edge is because the fabric that is woven on the shuttle loom, when they make Salvage self-edge fabric, both of the edges of that loom, or both of the edges of the fabric, are finished, right? So there's no frayed edges and there's no overlock like normal fabric when it's woven on the loom. Salvage is made on a special loom so that the edges of the fabric are finished, and so there's no fraying. And the way that the reason they did that is because it created a more durable fabric that was less fraying, and that's why on the Levi's denim Salvage jeans you see like the split side seam. If you look inside and pull your pants inside out, if you have a pair, the Salvage edges are on the inside, and that's where the leg meets and wraps around to the outside and it gets sewn down. And so they're 36 inches wide, the rolls, about that, so that they actually have to cut the middle of it and then only use like 8 inches from each side to get the Salvage edge to be landing on the center of the belt. So there's some waste in here, but we make up for that by using the scrap fabrics for other things. So that's why it costs so much to not only make this belt, but to assemble it and to build it as well. There's a lot more labor involved to get this line up. Now, back to the Japanese. There's basically 2 areas. Turkey is one of them too, but there's basically 2 areas where they make amazing Salvage denim. USA, of course, because that's where it started and it was originated. But then the Japanese bought a lot of the Salvage denim looms here in America, put them on boats, shipped them over to Japan, starting back in the 80s. And they started making Salvage denim in areas like Okayama and areas like Kaihara and areas like Kurabo. So in those regions in Japan, they make amazing Salvage denim. And so the first batch of Salvage denim belts was a mix between Kurabo, Kaihara Salvage denim and USA Cone Mills Salvage denim. This next one that we're going to release next week, that's going to drop, that one is all dead stock Kurabo Japanese Salvage denim. And
is this one of them?
This is not one of them.
Okay. So there is going to be a little difference from the first belt.
Tiny bit difference. And the difference is the Salvage edge is a little wider. Okay. It's a tiny bit wider the way it finishes. But the fabric itself, it's the same content. This is actually not 100% cotton. It's 99% cotton, 1% viscose. And so you feel a little bit of that in the fabric. It gives a tiny little bit more give. And so I think it's going to wear in really nicely.
Well, yeah. And I think that's cool too, because you don't think about it, but jiu-jitsu belts shrink over time. Mm-hmm. And like right here, if I grab your old Howard belt, like if you hold it up, it almost looks like there's a bunch of squares in it. Mm-hmm. But you got to think when it's brand new, it's flat, and then it gets condensed. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if having that little bit of flex will kind of combat that. And because that's something I noticed about my first Vanguard belt was, set that back there, is obviously I'm on the mat probably like 25 hours a week. Yeah, 25 hours a week in the gi with teaching and training. And so I feel like I break in a lot of belts. So I was expecting some shrinkage right off the get-go. And when I measured my belt from when I first got it to now, it didn't shrink at all. Yeah. Which I thought was really unique. And well, and that kind of goes to the whole testament of Vanguard too, like made to wear. Like, it's like, yeah, everything's cool. Like, we're making denim gis, but like, these are products that are going to last you a lifetime.
Well, the one thing that I do before I send the roll to Kataro, because what I do is the rolls are dead stock, which means that I'm buying them from a warehouse or reseller. And the first roll that I bought was from Cone Mills. They closed a number of years ago, 2016, 17, 18, somewhere in there, maybe 19.
So you were just sitting on this fabric.
Yeah, so I bought a few rolls of dead stock, not only denim, but they only had black, because there's not very much black salvage denim that's made. And so I buy it when it's either closeout or dead stock, or I pay a lot of money for it because it's, there's a very small quantity of yardages. So what I do before I send it to Kataro is I send it to LA Textile. They go ahead and launder the fabric first to take any shrinkage out of it before Kataro goes ahead and assembles it. So just like our kimonos that we make, the salvage denim kimonos, that's all pre-laundered. So any of the shrinkage is taken out of it. And when you get it, the kimonos, for example, when you get it, it's already washed. It kind of has that buttery feel. But the belts themselves, the fabric has been pre-laundered. So any of the shrinkage is taken out.
So obviously we're dropping Kataro a lot because you collaborated with them for this belt. And you've done collaborations before with Ludwig Van, with like Van's Vault, with Fairtex. I feel like you will kind of only work with someone if they meet your standards. But with that being said, was there any thought just to make Vanguard belts on your own versus, I mean, I feel like obviously this is way more special. And like, if you're going to do a collaboration, they're definitely like the best brand, one of the best brands to partner up with. But what was was there any thought to like, yo, let's do it ourselves versus like, oh no, it's only right to have them make it?
I think my metric is if there is a company or a brand that's already doing the work that I kind of consider best in class, then it's almost not worth my time and energy to go ahead and try to make a product that is kind of trying to be similar or trying to sort of be in that same class. Why not try to approach them to do a collaboration since they're doing already best in class, and maybe I can add something from a design perspective, or from, in this case, a dead stock perspective. Same thing with Vans. It was all from dead stock Vans fabric that I had bought at a closeout warehouse from one of their local printers when they used to be made in the US. So I was sitting on dead stock for years. So that's part of the story. And I've been working with dead stock and repurposed fabrics for probably 20 years on the fashion side or streetwear side too. And so I try to bring that to these projects. And so to answer your question, I thought Kataro was obviously best in class. So of course, I probably could make this belt, whether it's here in the US or even overseas, and it might be close to as good, but it wouldn't be worth the time or energy to have to develop it when they've already got it, and I can just add something to it and create an interesting, valuable collaboration just by doing that.
Yeah. I know they make white belts for like Origin and kind of other things, and like I see a lot more of like they'll make stuff for other brands, but I feel like you're like the first gi company they collaborated with. And
yeah, I think we were engaged. I don't know if we were the first jiu-jitsu, quote unquote jiu-jitsu gi company that they collaborated with, but I know that Gage from Kataro, Tom as well, did say, hey, this was the first time we've ever been approached to do something that was using dead stock denim to make a belt. So I think they were pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, the ethos of both your brands go hand in hand. So as I see you kind of playing with it on my belt, I feel like everything goes full circle. So I opted not to get this mark, which I see it. I'm actually wearing the first edition Vanguard Kimono Deno pants.
Nice.
Yeah, I got one of those. And this mark is on all of it. What is this right here? Yeah,
that's just a small sort of close up. If you were to look at the way that the fabric is, the weave and the weft are designed under a microscope, you'd see a shape that kind of resembles that on the shuttle loom. And so that's what that represents. And the reason I wanted to put it there is just to kind of represent woven, some sort of woven symbol. But I wanted to place it in the middle just so the wearer would know, okay, this goes right in the middle. I time it about that way. But then it gets
back. Hold on, let me cut you off. Going back full circle. So I saw you put it on your belt. And then when I had mine made from Kataro, I asked him not to embroider it on because I wanted to put my initials there.
Got it.
So that's my center mark.
Yeah.
And then when you were doing the production of this, and I remember coming by one of my therapy sessions on this couch where I just drop in here.
Yeah.
I was like, yo, like, what are you thinking? You're like, this is a tag for it. And I go, dude, why don't you do a middle embroidery for it? And you were like, I like that. So I want full credit for that, Mark. You know, I want that to be said.
I think that you're probably right. You're probably right.
But you were saying though, it's in the center, so it makes like a balanced tie, and even more going into the ethos of like, and well-weighted.
I think to your point, every time I would tie my belt, I would like go end to end, rub my thumb through, and then wherever my thumb would be, I'd put that on my belt. And yeah, that's as easy to do too. That's as easy to do. But I thought that mark itself, I wanted to use that, and it was used on the kimono. So I was figuring out how could we do it on the belt. And you probably said put it in the center instead of at the end. Maybe it was on the end. So it just made a more finished design.
Nice.
For that product.
Yeah, and it's cool too. It's like almost going to the sentiment of your belt. You use the same gold fabric, so it's like a little bit of your black belts in every one of these. Yeah,
I mean, I think gold, just in the sense that gold coloring it's a little darker on the kimonos, but I try to use gold. It's 126 PMS. I try to use that same gold color on the kimonos, on contrast stitch on the pocket, on the pockets of the pants, and in the belts, just as a little thread to tie all the Vanguard product together.
Nice. I like it. It's clean. It's clean for sure. Welcome to OTM Fight Shop here in Huntington Beach on Beach Boulevard and Slater. Check out their huge selection of tie pads, gloves, hand wraps. What's up, Nick? He's helping out a customer, some headgear right here. Bunch of unique tie stuff. All your off the mat needs like defense soap, new kicks for the mat. What? Custom gis and belts. Tie shorts, swag, hats, gloves, hugest selection of rash guards in Orange County, as well as belts and gis. OTM Fight Shop, guys, check them out. Thank you for sponsoring the podcast. Thank you, OTM. Check them out for all of your jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts needs. So, Mike, our relationship, we were training on the mat, but I feel like kind of this, call it like homie hookup or like, team manager relationship that athlete developed when we were on the way to Pan Ams, and you were like, yo, I'm doing Adidas Combat USA. I'm thinking about growing the jiu-jitsu division. I'm picking a couple SoCal guys. I feel like you'd be kind of cool to help grow this thing grassroots. And I remember I was like, yeah, 110%. And looking back, guys, if anyone ever approaches you to hook you up, negotiate a little bit. I could have been like, yeah, I'm down, but throw me some shoes, or like but I was just like, like super eager kid. And then from there, you were going to split and go to another company. And then you asked me, you were like, yo, I know like you got kind of a cool thing here. And when I say a cool thing, like, dude, I was getting like 20 gis a year and like all the more gear than I could ever imagine getting hooked up from. And then you were like, I'm going to go do this other brand. You have a cool thing here, obviously, but if you want to come with, there's a spot for you. And I told you, like, bro, like, F a brand, I'm loyal to you, man. And so we wrote out that other brand, and then you were like, yo, it's time, I'm doing my own thing.
Yeah.
And I'm ride or die Vanguard forever. But I'm doing my little side project, tactical division.
Nice.
And I wanted to get my Mike Dytri on, and I designed my own gi. And everyone I've showed it to has been absolutely like hyped on it. And everyone's like, yo, and we did such a small run. They're like, when's the next one? Because like A1s were gone in like a day. We have like maybe like 1 or 2 A2s left.
Nice.
But then I was like, nah, like I said, I'm Vanguard ride or die. I don't think this was just like a little special fun project.
Yeah.
But it's time to hook you up with the first gi that I ever designed.
Oh, wow. You're going to give me one?
I did every part of this. I made sure to stash an A0 for you. This is a tactical division gi.
Wow, really?
There's a couple in the shop. I've been telling you to put a black lapel on a gi for the last decade, so I finally just had to do it myself.
You did. You have.
And so there's a couple little Vanguard sentiments in this gi. Like, I like how you do the embroidery on the ribs, and it just kind of makes for a clean gi, and just kind of more of the colorways of everything.
I really like the black and the sort of that green, kind of like that OD tactical olive drab color that you use in this. I mean, those are always good together, right? The OD green, feels super light and comfortable with like the sublimated insert that you did here. I really like I like the logo lockup, the tactical division Tac.Div sort of lockup, and your
So we did that
crosshairs.
same. This is the only part of the gi that says Tac.Div, other than on the insides and the tags.
Mm-hmm.
So same thing. The where it's solid, but then we did the stroke on the end of the after Tac.Div, so tactical division.
Oh, I like the hits here on the side of
That's an ode to you, bro.
on the jacket. Yeah, that's essentially where we put all of the Vanguard marks.
And it just makes for a clean gi too. Like when you're wearing it, nothing's kind of popping out.
Thank you.
Of course, bro. So
I can't wait to wear this.
it's a.
I can't wait to wear this.
I don't know if it's
I
a one.
appreciate it.
I don't know if it's a one and done, or maybe the next one we do is a collab with Vanguard. But out of respect to you, everyone's like, "Yo, you got to make more," and I'm like, "Nah, I'm all Vanguard, bro." But I just wanted to have fun with it.
No, I think it's hey, you know, regardless of whether you're going to make more or not. I mean, I think, you know, my whole, and I appreciate you saying your Vanguard, you know, that you're riding the Vanguard train and that you're supporting, and it's just kind of like there's that relationship there. I think that's kind of how everything happens. That's what makes the world go round. You know, loyalty is a big part of the game, but there's room for everyone. I don't think that
Abundance mentality, Mike. Preach.
I don't think you know, I used to think that there was an issue if someone kind of, you know, used something that you designed or as an influence. I mean, I've seen it happen a number of times in jiu-jitsu from things that we've done with Vanguard, and it used to get me a little salty, but
Bro, R&D, bro. Rip off and duplicate.
I think that it only makes me think more about Vanguard and kind of try to push into directions that I haven't seen done before, and it actually kind of is inspiring and, you know, a little flattering too when I see it, and when people say, hey, they sort of lifted that off of what you guys did with Vanguard. I feel like it's not a zero-sum game.
Bro, it's probably half my DMs to you are just like, hey, look at this ski brand. They're copying you on this detail. You were the first to drop. Hey, look at this.
I feel like it's not a zero-sum game. I think there's enough room for everyone to do their thing. And at the end of the day, it's all about the product. So if your product doesn't stand up, or if it doesn't hold up, and if it's not quality, regardless of what sort of lipstick you put on it or what sort of marketing campaign you try to spin and photography you try to do around it, at the end of the day, people are going to wear it, and it's going to be tested and pressure tested on the mat and how it fits and so forth. And if that isn't good, then you're probably only going to get to a certain point. And I feel like Vanguard is definitely, that's what I set out to do first and foremost, was to make the product best in class, and then work on the other aspects of design and design sensibilities that I could kind of bring to it after that. And yeah, I kind of think that way. Yeah, so
I like how you said pressure tested, because you got, how much you weigh right now?
now, I don't know, 135.
Bro, you got one of the gnarliest pressure games in the business.
Yeah. I had to every time. I was always the smallest guy in the room with everything from wrestling.
I think that's why we hit it off too, bro. We even have like our small group chats of everyone. Like,
I'm a self-admitted, you know, have the small guy kind of complex just throughout athletics and just wrestling and stuff and MMA. I was always the smallest
but
guy
you
in the
don't
room.
drive a lifted truck. I want to
No,
throw that out there.
I don't. But I would always have to, like, you know, I honestly do better against bigger guys than I do with guys that are smaller in my own size, and it's just kind of like that timing and sort of thing, and just more or less what I'm accustomed to. But yeah
I had that issue competing as a kid because I'd only train with adults.
Yeah.
So I'd go and train with other kids, and I'd lock up triangles, and I'm like, bro, there's so much room. How do I
Squirrel
finish
out of it, man.
this?
Yeah.
Right on. Well, jumping back to some belt stuff, Mike, how do you store your belt when you're not training? Are you you know, threefold? You like fold it up to where it's, you know, perfect?
That's
do you
that's a good
toss it
question.
in your bag? Are you like me? I use mine as a strap.
That's a good question. I tried. There was a while where I would try to, like, you know, I'd fold my gi, because I started training in martial arts and, well, karate when I was 9 years old. So there was always this way, and then going to judo, there was always this way that we were sort of taught to fold our gis and store them to and from the academy. We would never wear our gis to and from the academy, and that's a whole nother conversation. But in terms of my belt, I tried for a while folding and then tying my belt around, kind of flipped over my shoulder, but then it just kind of felt it just wasn't coming normal or natural. So what I do is I fold my gi into like the sort of quarter sort of sandwich method. I put it inside of my bag, and then that goes inside of my duffel bag so it doesn't like smell anything else up. And then when I get home, I take that bag out, throw that bag with the gi into the wash, and I wash it. So after I put it in my bag, I fold my belt up just in the sandwich ways. I go half, I do half again, then I go half.
So you're a 3-folder.
I'm a 3-folder, and then it goes into the side of my duffel bag that isn't, touching any of the other stuff, and that's how I store my belt.
So is that where your belt lives?
That's where my belt lives. It's in my, well, it's here now, but if it wasn't here on the table, it would be in the trunk of my car.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next to my skateboard.
My man. Yeah, I'm a strapper. So I take my gi, fold it up. I don't have a gi bag. Or if I do, it's just excess.
That's your routine.
Yeah. And then so you strap it, throw it over hitchhiker style.
Yeah.
And then I take it off, and then I just throw it in my trunk.
Mm-hmm.
But now having a black belt, if I'm pulling up somewhere and it's dark and I gotta like teach or train, I'm like,
where's it at?
Gotta turn on the light. I'm like, oh, there it is. So it's good stuff, bro.
Someone stole my gi out of my car a couple of years ago, and it was the first black Salvage denim gi that we did. And
that seems like a targeted hit, bro.
Yeah, someone stole it.
Was the whole car ransacked or just the gi gone?
Just the gi was gone. And I thought my belt was going to be stolen too, because it was in this, it was in the bag. The jacket was kind of sticking out.
What was this at?
It was at Undefeated.
Wait, UACTP or?
Yeah, UACTP. Okay. And I thought my belt was going to be gone with it, but they left my belt. And then I was just thinking, like, who would steal somebody else's belt? I mean, I get the
bro,
gi,
Hanata Laranja. They stole the 10th stripe belt.
Oh God, really?
Yeah.
I thought he had a 27 stripe.
Oh yeah, the 27 stripe belt. They took the gi with the red lining, like his signature outfit.
Yeah.
And then I remember I was like, dang. And then he showed up on an interview and he was wearing a Salvage gi, and I was like, oh, this is a better fit. And even like I remember like the people interviewing him were like, oh, like a new outfit, or they said something. He's like, wow, you can't buy, or he's doing his thing.
I love him. Yeah, he's a great guy.
That's a low blow, bro. Stealing someone's belt. Dang, that's crazy. Are you sure you didn't leave it somewhere? Like,
no, man, it was stolen. Straight up
just
stolen.
The belt and just the gi.
Yeah.
Dang.
It's a bummer. But I'm gonna make another one. We're working on number 6, which is the 6th installment of Salvage Denim Kimonos, and that'll be sometime April. A drop sometime in April this year.
Nice. Well, I'm looking forward to that.
Cool.
Dytri, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I know we've been talking about this.
Thanks for having me.
For a minute, and
it.
timing worked out. I'm looking forward to seeing the next Kataro drop. For all of you that just got your black belt, I'd pick one up.
This one's going to be even more limited than the first one because I didn't have as much fabric to send Kataro.
Honestly, I was a little salty about that too. I was like, bro, like I thought these were only 100 made and you're doing another drop. Like, bro, I thought I was special.
This one's going to be even more limited. I don't even think we're going to be able to get that many out of this second one. And I think, dropping them every 2 or 3 years is still really limited edition. Just in the sense that I don't even think we got 100 out of the first drop. It was somewhere around 88. This one probably won't yield more than 70 total. So they're really special. I mean, it's definitely worth every penny for sure.
Nice. And I like it. Black belt only too.
That's it. Black belt only. People ask us to make colored belts all the time. And like I said, there's other brands doing it and they're doing it well. I think Howard, his colored belts, those are best colored belts I've seen. So
bro, I was trying to track down a Howard black belt and they're nowhere to be found.
No. And so why do it when there's other brands? I think you could probably buy a ranked belt from Tatami or Fuji that's decent, and so why do it? There's other people already doing it.
Doesn't sound pretty inclusive, bro.
No.
My man Mike, it was good to see you. I'm gonna move the mic back.
Cool.
Let's do it.
Thanks as always. And hopefully everybody enjoyed it.
Catch you on the map, brother.
Likewise.